Welcome back to the programme. I'm Belle Lupton. It's 10:30 here in Paris. Let's remind you of our top stories here on France 24. Campaigns ratchet up a notch in the UK a day ahead of the EU referendum. Opinion polls still showing both sides neck and neck. A U-turn from the French government, which now says a march against its controversial work reform bill can go ahead in Paris despite security concerns. And the US joins its American neighbours to intervene in Venezuela's political crisis. But President Maduro says he's not about to call a referendum on his leadership. When the British wake up tomorrow, the polls will be open in a referendum on their EU membership. The last 24 hours of campaigning have been frenzied, with each side trying to entice last-minute swing voters into their camp. As opinion polls show, pretty much both sides are neck and neck. The final TV debate is underway, with guests including politicians like far-right leader Nigel Farage, but also TV chefs and reality TV stars. Josh Vardy reports on the day's rallies.
Last day of campaigning in the UK for those for and against staying in Europe. This is the moment the leader of Nationalist Party UKIP has been waiting for. Nigel Farage has spent years campaigning for the country to leave the European Union and is already looking beyond the referendum.
We will still be members of the European Union on Friday morning, and we will have to enter into, relatively swiftly, a negotiation process that gets us out of political union but keeps us as good friends and trading neighbours.
Thursday's referendum pits those who argue the UK will be better off leaving the EU against those who say being a member brings huge benefits in terms of jobs, environmental protections and rights such as the freedom to live and work across the continent. Farage, along with fellow out-campaigners and prominent Conservatives Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, say that the country's sovereignty is under threat inside the European Union. They say this is the world's fifth largest economy and independent Britain will flourish. Few British and global institutions and experts agree with them. Neither does Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron.
Go out and vote Remain. Go out and vote Remain for a bigger, better Britain inside a reformed European Union. Stronger, safer, better off. A day to go. Let's do it.
Leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, has long been a Eurosceptic, but says he sees this referendum in domestic political terms.
It's a Tory-led Brexit campaign that is a real threat to working people in this country. So I say, we remain to fight.
If Britain votes to leave on Thursday, it will have a major impact on the EU. It will lose its second largest economy, one of its top military powers, and its richest financial centre.
Well, our correspondent Melissa Bell is in an English coastal town in the east of the country. She sent this update earlier.
This is Southend-on-Sea, the industrial heart of the Thames estuary. It is largely working class. It is a town that tends to vote Conservative. And although it's only an hour's ride on the train from London, it is about as far as it is possible to get from the chattering classes of Westminster. And it is in parts of the country like this where the future of the United Kingdom in the EU is to be decided. We've come up to the boardwalk here at near the pier at Southend-on-Sea to see what people have to say. Tell us what you think about the referendum.
I'm fed up with it. be glad when it's all over, but it's exciting.
Which way are you going to vote?
I'm voting in.
You're voting in? Both of you?
No, I'm voting
You're voting out?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I'm voting in because I think we are better off in, and if we need to better ourselves, we can only do it from the inside and not the out.
Well, I'm very much voting to leave. On the basis that I think as a democratic country we should be able to make decisions affecting our own lives ourselves within the UK elected politicians making those decisions. That's definitely not to say that I'm against in any way, shape or form our European colleagues. I love going to Europe, but I'd like to make decisions ourselves.
Shan't be sorry when it's all over with. And I think everybody is tired of it, and we've all had our own opinions. And I think we've all had enough now.
Has it just gone on too long?
It's definitely gone on too long. definitely, yeah, because it's been war, it's been going on for weeks, and I still think we're going to go on for weeks afterwards, you know. So, yeah, finished, over with. Thank you.
It's something that you'll hear repeated quite often, that people have simply had enough with hearing about the EU and the United Kingdom's place within it. And what they want more than anything else is that polls will open at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, and that finally this question can be put to the people and laid to rest once and for all.
Melissa Bell talking to the people of Southend-on-Sea in the east of the UK. Well, in a campaign criticised for the coarsening of its rhetoric, one group has bucked the trend. Opération Croissant, as it's called, travelled from Paris to London earlier. Its mission to woo the Brits into staying in the EU. Volunteers handed out croissants and love letters handwritten by their neighbours across the channel. The pastry and the postcards didn't last long, though. British police shut the operation down, saying it broke electoral laws. And it's not just the French worrying about tomorrow's referendum result. Over in the tiny British territory of Gibraltar, they also know which way they want the vote to go, as Fernand Van Tetz reports.
These cars and motorbikes carry thousands of workers and tourists to Gibraltar every day. Located off the southern tip of Spain, the tiny peninsula, also known as the Rock, is increasingly alarmed at the prospect of Britain leaving the European Union.
There might be a lot of debate. As we say in a family, you fight within the family, but you don't leave the family, because as Cameron said, if what you want to be, little England or little France, or we've got to be together.
Half the size of London's smallest borough, Gibraltar largely depends on tourism, financial services and online gaming. Low taxes and access to the EU single market make it attractive for investors. A vote for Brexit would change things dramatically.
How do you change your economic model to go from being able to sell to 520 million people to sell only to 32,000 people? These are challenges which are existential to the current economic model. We would have to completely reposition our economy, and it's something that is going to be very difficult.
Without the free movement of people, shops that sell alcohol and tobacco, far cheaper than on the mainland, would also be hard hit. Spain, which ceded the territory back in 1713, senses an opportunity. If Brexit happens, the Spanish foreign minister said his country would be happy to share British sovereignty over the Rock, allowing it to keep its access to the EU.
Now, tomorrow's referendum will take place exactly a week after British MP Jo Cox was killed in a violent attack in her constituency in the north of England. A staunch Remain campaigner, today, Wednesday, would have been Cox's birthday. Her husband Brendan paid this tribute in London earlier.
Today would have been Jo's 42nd birthday. She would have spent it dashing around the streets of her hometown, trying to convince people that Britain is stronger in Europe. She feared the consequences of Europe dividing again, hated the idea of building walls between us, and worried about the dynamics that could unleash. Jo's killing was political. It was an act of terror designed to advance an agenda of hatred towards others. What a beautiful irony it is that an act designed to advance hatred has instead generated such an outpouring of love.
That was Brendan Cox, the husband of murdered British politician Jo Cox. France's government has agreed to allow a march to go ahead tomorrow, Thursday, in Paris against its controversial labour reforms. The decision comes soon after a ban had been announced for security reasons. 2,000 police officers will be on call tomorrow, and 100 individuals have been forbidden from attending after last week's demonstrations turned violent. Our correspondent Aurore Dupuis sent this update from the leading union's headquarters.
The 7 trade unions have said that they have found a compromise with the French Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve. They say that they've obtained the right to march in the heart of Paris. Now, the march will be shorter than originally planned by trade unions. It will be 1 kilometre long around Bastille. But the labour union seems satisfied with the route that has been picked by the French Interior Minister. Take a listen to the leader of the main trade union here in France, the CGT, Philippe Martinez.
The government has taken its desire to shut down this social movement to a new level by forbidding the Paris protest on the 23rd of June. This decision represented a serious indictment of the fundamental right guaranteed by the Constitution of the right to protest. The organizations involved continue to insist that they mean to protest peacefully. After closed discussions with the Interior Minister, the unions have obtained the right to protest in Paris on the 23rd of June on a route proposed by the Interior Minister.
Well, the government originally wanted to ban the march. It wanted it to be a static rally. But although they found a compromise, Philippe Martinez, the head of the CGT, says that they will not be deterred by their main goal, and that is to force the government to back down, to scrap the planned labour law, the so-called El Khomri bill. According to the government, that law is necessary to make it easier for companies to hire and fire employees. But according to the trade unions, well, that is equal to social dumping. So Martinez says that he will call on French youths, on the unemployed, on the elderly to come and protest not only tomorrow, Thursday, but also on the 28th of June.
Our correspondent Aurore Dupuis there. Thousands have been forced from their homes in Southern California, chased by wildfires that have been raging for up to a week in some areas. A change in the weather in California has brought some relief to firefighters battling the blaze, but the lull is expected to be temporary, as Alexander Alcott explains.
A terrifying blaze that threatened the community on this Los Angeles hillside. The smoke and flames right on their doorsteps gave many homeowners a major scare.
Somebody started beating on their door like they were breaking it in. And so I opened the door, he says there's a fire.
The entire hillsides behind me in this home were completely engulfed.
These, like the vast majority of homes, have been kept safe so far, thanks to aggressive strategic firefighting, along with a little bit of luck. The emergency crews who were soaking the hillside from land and air were able to make gains as the Southern Californian heatwave started to ease on Tuesday. Nonetheless, hundreds of people have been evacuated from danger zones as a precaution, and the authorities are advising everyone to be prepared.
We need everybody in those areas to stay in tune with the media and have their wildfire action plan to be ready, set, and go.
While firefighters have made gains, there are still many wildfires dotted around the western U.S. that continue to pose a threat. In the foothill city of Duarte in LA County, a blaze forced the evacuation of more than 800 homes. Meanwhile, some 1,500 residents in 600 homes were forced to flee in San Diego. And outside of California, massive wildfires have also spread in Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico.
Venezuelans have been collecting signatures this week to try and trigger a recall referendum on their president, Nicolas Maduro. Despite food riots earlier this month, dialogue between government and opposition has broken down. The US is the latest to try and bring the two sides back together, as Fernand Vintets explains.
They show no signs of backing down. These Venezuelans want their president, Nicolas Maduro, gone. 2 million people have signed a petition for a recall referendum. The country is facing an economic crisis. Food shortages have sparked deadly protests and looting. The United States has joined international efforts to mediate a solution, dispatching a top diplomat to Caracas.
The United States joins with others in the international community in calling on the Venezuelan government to release political prisoners, to respect freedom of expression and assembly, to alleviate shortages of food and medicine, and to honor its own constitutional mechanisms, including a fair and timely recall referendum that is part of that constitutional process.
Maduro welcomed US involvement, but blamed the opposition for the lack of progress.
It is outrageous that dialogue is being rejected. Venezuela is demanding dialogue. I want dialogue. Do you know why? Because I want peace. I want to solve problems. I want the economy to recover.
The opposition is skeptical. The recall referendum is being challenged at every turn. They've approached the Organization of American States. On Thursday, the body will hold a special meeting to determine whether Venezuela is in violation of its democratic charter. This could eventually result in the country being kicked out of the OAS. Maduro's government is fighting hard to prevent such a political embarrassment, but that is unlikely to get food back on the shelves.
Now, for those Brits seeking a bit of an escape from all the EU referendum debate, Glastonbury has opened its gates. This may come as not much of a surprise, but opening night is under a grey sky. Organisers have asked drivers to delay their journeys due to the heavy traffic caused by rain. Very British. But that hasn't stopped tens of thousands of partygoers from heading to the festival, where Adele, Coldplay and Muse will be performing over the weekend.
Hello.
You're watching France 24. Let's get you up to date with our headlines. Campaigns ratchet up a notch in the UK a day ahead of the EU referendum. Opinion polls still showing both sides neck and neck. And a U-turn from the French government, which now says a march against its controversial work reform bill can go ahead in Paris, despite security concerns. That's it from me for the minute, but I'll be back at the top of the hour and Georgia Calvin-Smith will be here after the break with Eye on Africa. Do stay with us.